Okay, yes, here we have Joe Diomede talking to my friend Neil, sitting here in Weymouth, Dorset again. And Neil lives up in Dorchester, the next town up from here. Neil and I met years ago, 22 years ago to be exact, working in a bicycle shop. Neil was fixing bikes, I was fixing them and selling them. And Neil's career working with his hands, his head, and his body started quite a young age, 15 years old. He realized school wasn't for him. So he took off to find a whole different track in life. And so, Neil, what did you do at 15 when you stopped school?
Well, I realised school was not for me, so being very, very keen on railways, steam engines and train spotting, I thought, right, that's what's good for me. So off I went, got a job at Didcot Railway Centre in Oxfordshire, which was then Berkshire, of course, to look at steam engines, get involved with steam engines. So my very first job sounds almost impossible because I was driving the steam engines in the centre at the age of 15. Nobody told me what to do, how to do it. I just picked it up. Health and safety now would have had a nightmare, but of course they weren't around then. So there was I, oh, take that one down there, would you? Okay, yes. Turn it round on the turntable. Yes, okay. And off I went. Well, some of them needed turning round, some of them needed putting backwards, forwards into the shed for the next day. And there was I driving the steam engine on my own, and off I went. It was about sort of a quarter of a mile down to the other end of the kind of loco department, and got onto the turntable. Round we went, back out into the shed, all on my own. Did all the points and everything myself. So really, I was my own man. So at that sort of age, would totally unheard of now.
Yes, totally unheard of now, that's for sure. And you were telling me before, off camera, that you were a fireman, really, which meant keeping the trains going. So give us a little insight to the life of a fireman and how much coal and water and what do these steam engines take to use? Because we're used to diesel trains, electric trains. We have no insight into really a steam train. That's the thing of the bygone era, but you worked in it.
Mm. Well, our job basically as a fireman was to keep the fire going, of course, whatever the driver demanded, going faster or heavier trains. Our job was to keep the fire going, keep the boiler filled up. Obviously, if you ran out of water, that was the end of the story. But that job then, as a fireman, we would have to we have to adapt to what the demand of the driver gave to us. So even at 15, 16, I was on the railways, going to London, everywhere, basically, to Bristol, London, as I say, Birmingham, Southampton, on branch lines, main lines, and all that sort of thing. So that was our job at the time. So yeah.
Wow. And water, you were saying before about scooping the water up. How did you keep, and 5,000 gallons was it you were saying?
The tenders that were attached to the locomotive held the water and the coal, but water didn't last very long at all. So every now and again there were water troughs between the rails that we were running on. So we had a scoop underneath the engine that scooped the water out of the trough into the 5,000 gallon water container in the tender. And the coal lasted slightly longer, but depending on how far you went, you needed more coal, and then you could stop maybe at another locomotive depot and get coal. But the water was the big one. 5,000 gallons sounded a lot, but it didn't last you very long, especially if you were going faster or heavier trains. So yeah, that was our job, to keep that all up together.
Wow. And how much coal would you have to shovel on a basic run to London from Oxfordshire?
Well, if it was a heavy train, yeah, you could use half of the 3 to 5 tons of coal, depending on how big the locomotive was. Shoveling 3 tons of coal took a lot of doing, and as young men we were quite fit, and we could shovel it, and the water we could use up. So yeah, it depending on how far you went, how heavy the train was, and how fast it would have to go to get there.
And how many people shoveled, how many firemen would be on a train typically?
Only one. We were on our own, driver was on his own, he had to do a job, we had to do the job for him, so that was our job, and we had to do it quickly and properly.
Whoa, 15 years old driving a locomotive, and 16 years old shoveling 5 tons of coal and scooping up water. Definitely a bygone era. And then so after that, diesel trains kind of saw the end of the steam train.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that lasted about another year, 18 months. It was kind of interesting because I've got a mechanical mind, but it was totally boring, and we just sit there and like a big car basically to make a train work. But yeah, I mean, that didn't last long because the electric came in and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that was. But once the steam engine had gone, that was our interest. Most of our interest would disappear with the steam engine, and that was it.
Right. So 7 years with the steam engines. And how long, just quickly, you were saying, how long does it take to prep the locomotive, the old steam trains, to go for a journey? Do you have to get there early in the morning? You don't just go and fire it up, do you?
No, that fire lighting, as we called it, was done in the evening or the night time. Once the service crew would empty the boiler, empty the firebox. That means there was no fire in it. Along came the fire lighter with his little bits of wood and his little bits of coal, and light it up at least 6 to 8 hours before. And by the time we got there, we had sort of 20, 30 pounds of steam. Then we had to start raising steam, prepping the engine, getting everything ready for the journey. And that's what our job was, to get it all running. And then, of course, we took it off the shed, joined it to the train, and off we went.
Wow, a total different world, yeah, for sure. As we approached electric cars and electric chains and maglevs and whatever else we have right now, incredible that you actually worked at the tail end of the whole steam industry when that was the main transport. Sure, yeah. And after that, the diesel, like you said, lasted only another 18 months. And then driving trucks, was it, or many other jobs?
I went to drive an ice cream truck of all things, going around shops delivering ice cream to people. And then I went into a car factory making the old MG cars at Abingdon, Oxfordshire. Well, as it was, Abingdon-on-Thames. And then, yeah, went to work in garages, 2 garages that I can think of. I just went on from there, really. So, yeah.
And the bike industry?
And the bike industry was the last thing. I sort of taught myself bikes, or my dad taught me to start with, how to service a bike, basically. And then that's what I'm doing now. I've got my own business. Servicing bikes, doing restoration of bikes, and basically making them good again. Yeah.
Right. And didn't you have a keen eye for the bikes? Because I believe when I met you 22 years ago, you already were in the mountain bike racing scene before then, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I worked my way up to 3rd veteran mountain biker in the country for 3 years before I gave that up because of family commitments. So that was my passion, and then I carried on the passion, making bikes good, repairing, selling, and everything to do with bikes. But yeah. Yeah.
Well, I remember us 22 years ago.
Yeah. I met Joe 22 years ago. He came in the shop, and I was repairing them. Joe was building the bikes and going upstairs selling the bikes. So we had a good relationship there, so it all came from there, really. So, yeah, the bike trade.
Yeah, really amazing. So there you go, colorful lives of yesteryear, off to the steam trains at 15, moved on to diesel, building cars in factories. Wow, those are interesting times for sure. In England, seeing a lot of changes. Neil has been through a lot of those changes, and here we sit in this the beautiful place of Weymouth, and with a lovely brick wall behind us in this beautiful house we're in. So, Neil, thank you very much. And
pleasure. Yeah, no, pleasure, and good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Yeah. And any advice to the young people of today about work and jobs, and to not be scared to follow something that might not seem.
Just go and do it. I mean, if you're interested, find a place that does it and go and do it. And I didn't look back at all. The only thing I regret is the fact that I was not there long enough to watch the steam in 10, 15, 20 years, which I really wanted to do, but it disappeared for me. So. Yeah.
But you do volunteer work now, keeping those steam trains going for the tourist industry.
I'm working back in exactly the same place that I started when I was 15. When I retired at 67, I went back to the same place, and they all thought I was mad. I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I've come to build these steam engines for you," and that's what I did, and now I can help somebody in the big loco shed, and now as a museum, that people would come around with their children, and they say, "Wonder what this is, Dad?" So if I'm walking through, I go through and say, "How you doing, guys?" I said, interested in steam? Oh yeah. He said, would you like me to show you how they worked? Yeah, please. And so we did. Up on the footplate, showed them where you put the fire and put the coal and the water and everything we did.
Are they amazed when you say you actually, you didn't just learn this to work in the museum, you actually did this for a living when you were 15?
I did it for a living, and some people say, God, I can't believe that was centuries ago. No, it wasn't centuries ago. It was within 50 years of my working life, and that was how I started, driving them at 15, and it was just crazy, and it was there, yeah.
Wow. Well, Neil, at 2 centuries old, you look pretty good.
I try my best, yeah.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And, well, there you go. Joe Diomede, Telly in Weymouth, just catching people with interesting lives. And Neil, thank you very much.
That's a pleasure, yeah. Good to meet you.
Okay. Good night.